In the world of sim racing, I'm probably known for a couple things. Number one, being the ARCA farmer. But number two is being a budget sim racer, because even as of a year and a half ago, I was driving on a Logitech G920. Even now, I'm only driving on a Moza R5 wheel and base. But I've always said speed on sim racing is not about your equipment. But how am I supposed to know if I've never tried out top of the line sim racing equipment before? Well, today that changes because my friends over at SimMotion brought me out to the beautiful facility of Spokane Valley, Washington to see their facility and try out some of their showroom sim racing rigs. And I'm going to spill the tea on the entire rig, piece by piece of equipment, and how I felt after the 2 hours I spent testing it over 2 days. And guiding me along the way was Darren from SimMotion, but you might know him better as Darren Ganji from Inside Sim Racing, a real blast from the past from Sim Racing YouTube. I was super excited to have him to show me the ropes. Is a $7,000 motion rig worth the price tag? What about an $800 brake pedal? I'm going to tell you all about that and more, but first, let's just see my genuine reaction to trying a full motion sim racing rig for the very first time. All right, here we go. I feel the vibration already. There's just so much more information. It's like an overload almost. Everything in my body is just feels it rather than just my hands.
Yeah, it's hard to hone in on how the force feedback feels when everything else is kicking.
First laps in this setup were honestly sensory overload. So much was just completely different than I'm used to doing in the comfort of my home. I would say at first my brain was not yet convinced by the motion rig system that it was part of the same universe that what my eyes were seeing were part of. But I was able to acclimate to it. Maybe it took me close to 5 minutes, I would say, before it felt really connected between the seat and the racetrack in front of me. It was an extremely different sensation because I'm only ever used to my hands and my feet specifically for sim racing. What I felt in my butt was really the same that I would feel with the haptic vibration feedback that I would get in my Fanatec V3s, but it was much clearer, much higher fidelity vibrations and bumps and all of that in the seat of my pants, really. And because I didn't have that experience in real life racing, I don't have that intuition yet on what that information should translate to in my hands, but it was very intuitive. I got going, I started setting really fast lap times within a few laps, and I was pretty much up to where I thought I would be on my home rig, but definitely not any faster. And I think that mainly has to do with the force feedback, because that was the second most jarring part of this experience, was running on that 12 Newton meter force feedback direct drive base, where I'm used to the R5, which I also just run low. I think I run maybe 50% intensity on 3 strength. So I barely have anything pulling against me when I'm driving in my normal rig. So to have that feeling of the forces actually physically working against my arms, it tired me out. It was a little bit harder to be as precise as I usually am, but there was just so much more feeling in everything. It was so much more physical and not as much on my eyes. One thing that I was telling Darren is that when I'm driving on my own rig, I literally put my pedal indicators in the middle of my screen so that I can see what my percentages are at all times. But with the pedals and the steering and everything just being so much more physical, I felt like I could move to the percentages that I wanted. And maybe I wasn't as exact as I thought I was, but I knew that I was getting to a certain point without having to see that visual indicator of the green and red bars. Well, let's go through the rig piece by piece. It starts out with the SimMotion 160mm premium aluminum extrusion chassis. Felt very solid, never felt any give in it. Felt like I was in a car pretty much. I guess the equivalent that I have to this rig is my $100 office chair, which rolls around if I push too hard on the pedal, and no, I'm too lazy to create a DIY solution for this. I'm sorry. The next couple items I'll group together, it's the Moza R12 V2 direct drive base, along with a couple wheels, one that I used for NASCAR, which was the CS V2P steering wheel, and then for road I switched to the FSR2. For the R12 wheelbase, we tuned it so that I would use all of the range of the R12 and not some wimpy little half force like I use on even my R5. But when I was driving that car, it felt like a workout, it felt tough, it felt physical, but it never felt like too much. It was never too hard to turn the wheel for the sake of it being too hard. I would question why I would need much more torque than that, like a 16 or 20 Newton meter wheel. I'm not sure if I've ever felt a real car feel like that, but also I've never raced in real life. For me personally, I don't know if I would utilize all of the R12 if I was driving it on the daily basis, but for the one-time feel the reality immersive event, I think the R12 was a good fit because it felt pretty close to what I would expect to feel in real life. And then here's where I'll probably get to my first hot take of the video. I don't really understand super expensive steering wheels. Like, on the surface level, yes, I understand you want a steering wheel on your base that looks like the one from the car that you are driving in the sim. That's super immersive, right? That makes a lot of sense. But in my mind, I'm never looking at my steering wheel when I'm driving. I'm always looking at the screen. I'm always looking somewhere else. If anything, the functionality of the wheel comes from the buttons and the knobs on it. So I understand that if you're doing like an F1 type driving, but my type of driving, I don't need too many buttons on it. Next, we're going to get to the pedals. So I used a Moza Racing CRP2 pedal set with a third pedal added, which was the Moza Racing M Booster active pedal. It was really cool to get to try this active pedal out because it really hasn't been released to the public yet. It's still on pre-orders, and one of the ones that was sent out as samples was sent to Sim Motion. So I was really excited to try this pedal. I'm like, this single pedal is more expensive than my wheelbase and pedals put together. I gotta see what the hype is about. But first off, the load cell pedals, the CRP2s, were just as I expected. They felt like a load cell pedal that I would expect to come out this year, probably a little bit smoother than what I currently have with my Club Sports, but not by any margin that is worth mentioning, especially if the price range is more or less the same. But that M Booster pedal was just cool. For ovals, I actually didn't like it. And I think it was probably because of the settings. Darren stressed to me how much you would have to tweak with these settings for each car and do what you want with it. And the thing is, when I'm oval racing, especially on tracks where I'm only dragging the brake, it actually was very hard for me to find those percentages that I'm used to finding very consistently on my pedals at home, that 0 to 20%. And that's something that I would probably learn or tweak to on the active pedal, but it made me realize if I'm only using 20% of my brake pedal and I just want to get there and drag it, I don't need this super fancy pedal. It's really not doing anything for me. Where it became just a massive game changer though was when we switched to the Ferrari GT3 on Watkins Glen, and I could slam on the brakes, feel the ABS, feel the feeling of just having it work against me. That was one of the more cooler parts out of all of this. That was part of that crazy sensory overload. Like, I have never been this comfortable driving a road course before, which is crazy to think out of the admittedly not tons and tons of hours, but I have put a decent amount of hours into road on my home setup. And to be able to sit into something that is just completely alien feeling an oval and have it feel completely natural in road, I think that says a lot about the setup, but I also think it says something about how I am so used to what I have on the oval side that it might work against me trying out all these new bells and whistles. But on the road side, I feel like I'm more of a fresh slate. I think that I was just instantly more confident on hard braking than I have ever been, even on my Club Sport pedals. And I don't think it's just because of the pedals. I think it was also because of the motion that we'll talk about later, and then also because of the steering. It made me feel more connected to the track than I am when I run my home setup. I think that if I was running road, I would actually want more force feedback than what my R5 has to offer. While if I got this crazy setup, I think I would still run less force feedback than what it could supply on the ovals. We're going to skip past the shifter because I didn't want to embarrass myself trying to go through the gears manually on the new active shifter. So we'll go past that and then go straight to the big chunk of this cost. The D-Box Generation 5 4250i haptic system with 4 actuators and brackets. That is $7,300 of product right there. And to be quite honest, this was the most cool part of the entire rig. It better be, right? If it's half the cost of the entire thing, it better be the coolest part. But it was. I tried another motion rig that had the actuators but no haptic system, and it just didn't feel right to me. It needed that haptic system because it's like you're only in half a car if you only have the actuators. You feel the forces, but you don't feel the track. With the actuators and the haptics, you feel the track and the car forces. And I think that that's the only way to do it. I don't think you can go half in on it if you're going to make a purchase like this. With that motion platform system, I can feel the load into the corner in my back. I can feel the car disengage in my butt. I can feel still all of the information in the pedals and the hands, but now it's almost redundant in a way where I can be more confident in it. Now on the ovals, that's not particularly helpful for me because I am driving so proactively, like I said before. I am guessing what the car is going to do before it actually happens and set up the car so that it does that, and I'm only really having to react to stuff if it goes wrong in the middle of the corner. But on road, where I am more reactive to everything, it was a game changer once again, just like the pedal, just like the more force feedback in the wheel. Just having all that extra information and spread across to different places, it was not only more immersive, but it helped me feel more confident, which I believe in road would make me faster eventually. I'm not sure if I was faster right off the rip, but it felt like I was driving pretty close to my abilities on road. Whereas on oval, maybe I was reaching that, but it would be almost in spite of all of the things going on around me and not because of them. So after trying this crazy sim racing rig, am I gonna leave the world of value and budget sim racing behind? Not yet. Maybe eventually. It really depends on my priorities in sim racing. For the longest time, I have always wanted to be fast at sim racing. That was my goal. With this channel, I am nothing if I am not super duper fast, but that is only part of the world of sim racing. The other part of it is the pure immersion of it, the feeling that you are driving a real car, racing a car that is worth many times more than this sim racing rig ever will be, and just being able to throw it around a track. That is the beautiful and best use case for a rig like this. One day I may grow into a person that enjoys that type of sim racing more than anything else. But the one thing that I learned about myself and what I want in this sim racing gear space is that if I'm going to go all in, I can't half-ass it. I gotta get the stuff that makes me feel the most immersed, or else it'll feel like something is missing. And I think that is the issue that you see on the sim racing subreddits. A lot of people just keep upgrading and upgrading and upgrading because there's always something more out there. So I think if you're happy where you're at and you feel like your sim racing rig, you're capable of competing and having fun on it, I don't think you are missing out on too much in terms of speed. In terms of just the pure immersion and enjoyment, though, I would say that this was a very eye-opening experience. I enjoyed it a lot. I can't wait to go back to try it again, and then maybe one day I'll be able to call one of these guys mine. But thank you once again to Darren and the guys over at SimMotion for letting me come out. And yes, that is the Darren from Inside Sim Racing. He is the owner of SimMotion. So that is a cool little thread there between YouTube and SimMotion as well. And they are not sponsoring this video, but we are working towards a long-term partnership. So be on the lookout for that and check them out in the description. But let me know in the comments below, have you tried a full motion sim rig yet? And if you have, do you feel like it is worth the price tag over a cheaper sim racing rig? But anyways, thank you all for watching. Hope you have a wonderful day. Hope to see you all on the track.